The
I
mic
don't
like
like these. I
that.
think we should get rid of these.
What?
Or I'll get a hacksaw and cut them down.
You could do that now if you want.
Or get a lower table.
Or get a lower table.
Yeah, see, that's the entrepreneurial approach.
It is.
Rather than hacksawing our kit.
Yeah.
Hey there, creative minds and business enthusiasts. Welcome to Looks Like We Made It, the podcast where we dive deep into the dynamic world of video marketing, content creation, and all things creative. I'm Izzy, your guide through this creative journey, wearing two hats, head of production and senior video editor. But I'm not in this alone. Meet the other half of our dynamic duo, my dad, Chris. Our director and creative genius, I've still got that one in there, behind Howell Media, and together we're not just a podcast, we're a father-daughter team on a mission to provide insights, tips and laughs from the heart of the creative industry. I'm still a little bit rusty on this one. Whether you're a business looking to up your video game or a budding creative hungry for knowledge, this is the place to be. We've got real life experiences, expert advice and a sprinkle of anecdotes to keep things interesting. So if you're ready to unlock the power of video, bespoke content and training to achieve amazing results, you're in the right spot. Fasten your seatbelts because this Looks Like We Made It, where we turn creativity into success, one episode at a time. First time in, I've done it. Let's go. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And your voice is back.
And I'm back. And well, how are you? We feel like we're on our best behaviour today
I think
because
we have to be on our best behaviour.
I was about to announce the guest, but we're still a bit rusty because it's the first time back. Our guest today is Richard Lee. Hello.
Hello, thank you.
How
How
are
can
you?
I follow that intro?
I know we've all got
It's
to
like
do
it's
one.
rehearsed so well.
I know.
It's written
I know.
down.
Yeah.
Hence why I look like I've got my eyes shut when I'm reading it. But thank you for coming on the show. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. A little cold, but otherwise I'm fine.
That's fine. We've said to edit out the coughs, so you'll
Exactly.
be all right.
Edit out the coughs. Going to keep nice distance apart. Don't want any of your toddler flu that you might also give me second bout.
Well, exactly. I mean, you're in the safe space over there, so you're in the.
Well, he hugged and kissed me when he arrived, so that's no good, is it? So
We're all doomed. This is the end.
Doomed.
But well, okay. So there's so much to talk about with you.
Yeah, I think Richard needs to give us a synopsis of his
Well, give us a synopsis
full
then.
journey.
Yeah, so I started out about 20 years ago now in media. I started at a production company called Dean Films in the Northeast, making corporate TV commercials as an entry-level role, moved up to producer, left there after about 5 or 6 years and moved into the technology space where I was always quite into the technical end of production anyway. Even though I was in a more production role, that company was actually quite cool because there was about 30 of us, so all different skills were there. So you could actually dip into and learn quite a lot from lots of other people.
brilliant.
But I then moved into a technology role, filming and streaming conferences for a digital events technology company, where I moved more and more into the technology sector. So I became a product manager there and managed the product and what the future features were going to be and what the direction was that we were going in. And then I founded my own company, doing something quite similar. I wanted to go in a slightly different direction with the product and scale that business and exited about 2 years ago. And now
Wow.
go to the gym a lot and
Brilliant.
chill out.
Yeah,
Good for you. It feels like you need to chill out.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say in that timeline for that story, did you say was just a couple of years or how far
I
back
mean, I've been
did that
working for
go?
20 years now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Look younger than that.
I didn't notice.
those-
I'm only actually 25.
Yeah, so those boyish good looks there, Richard.
Though everybody I know tells me I look really old.
Oh, well, I get the same thing, but I get told that I look like you, so
Well, you're just
I lucky.
blessed in that regard. Then, aren't
I
you?
just wear more eyeliner than you, to
Exactly.
be fair.
Exactly.
But I think in terms of, so like I said, I did go do a deep dive on your LinkedIn, as you would have seen my face pop up in your notifications. And the thing that I really liked you saying is that almost from the get-go, you said you're a native Northeasterner. And I think that is something that, particularly in the Northeast, that sense of pride is really important. But how has that sort of identity helped, or has it had any kind of impact on how you work, or?
I don't know about how I worked. I was always really passionate that I didn't want to move to the south. And I've had like numerous times, like job opportunities and even clients saying over the years, like, why do you not live in London? Like, it'd be so much
Yeah.
easier. And I always say, like, my standard of living will be so much worse in London. And I have a really good standard of living in the north.
Yeah.
And, from 2011, when I moved to that technology company, pretty much all of our clients were in the south or overseas. So like I never ever went and filmed or streamed an event in the northeast. I don't think I've probably done that like once ever, and I've been working in that industry now for like 15 years.
Wow.
Always working with large scale clients, and they predominantly are in the south. There's some in the north, but not very many.
Yeah.
and usually even if they are in the north, they want to film in the south anyway because their execs are often in the south. Um, so so I always was really passionate that I wanted to stay in the north. And London's like 3 hours away. You can get the train. It's dead
Yeah.
easy. You can sit and work on the train. It's actually some of my most productive time
Yeah.
because you're sitting with no distraction. You haven't got staff asking you loads of questions. You haven't got clients harassing you. You just sit and get through your emails or
Oh,
edit or do whatever you
totally.
need to do.
It's like an office on wheels,
It
isn't
is.
it?
I mean, our longest client that we've had for 20 years plus, they're based in Surrey. And people forget it's not actually that big a country, is it? Really?
No, exactly. It's tiny.
It's literally smaller than most states in America. So in that regards,
Well, people in the south think it
Oh,
is
they
because
think,
they're like,
oh,
"Oh
yeah,
my
they-
god,
yeah,
it took you
yeah.
3 hours to get here."
Exactly.
And I'm
yeah.
like, I remember at Dean we used to work with Clearcast a lot for TV commercials, and the exec there was like, "Oh, it takes me an hour and a half to get into work," and I was like, "How far away do you live?" And he was like 6 miles,
Yeah.
and I was like, "It takes me an hour and a half to get to work."
That'll do it.
And you see, I have a rubbish standard of living.
Yeah.
Like I live 15 miles from work, and it takes me 40 minutes,
Yeah.
and that's because the traffic's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like, and why would you want me to live there?
Well, that's it. I think
So I
just-
don't even think it's quicker when you live there.
No.
Yeah, totally. And I think weirdly when even though we're based in the northeast, I think you can pretty much work anywhere. Like the power of like live streaming and events, you could literally be sat anywhere and say you work somewhere and that's it. But
Exactly. So
Yeah.
any regrets exiting, or are you kind of itching to get stuck into something new?
No, I always get asked this question. I remember when I was exiting, my financial advisor was like, "I'll give you 6 weeks, Richard, you'll be back to work." And I was like, "It won't be 6 weeks, I'm going to South America for 5 weeks."
Yeah.
I was like, "Definitely won't be 6 weeks."
I know you'll need a
And he
week
was
to
like,
recover.
"Okay, 6 months." I was like, "I don't think it'll be 6 months. I'm like pretty tired. Like, I don't think I really want to do this anymore." I actually spoke to a guy last week and he was like, "Oh, so you're doing something now?" And I was like, "No, I'm just doing some bits of net stuff and some bits of consultancy." And no, I think it's nice to have a different pace in life for a while. But I am keeping myself busy,
Yeah.
and I think my mind's still active. I've got some Ned roles at charities and helping some start and scale up businesses. So I'm still, my brain's active, but it's less of the doing now, which is quite nice.
But it's nice to have a choice. It's nice, in the rare times that we've been lucky enough to have some choices. It can really sort of focus your mind and provided you keep, you're obviously still in the mix and you're keeping abreast of what's going on and all the rest of it. So I think that clarity, having a clarity of thought is a nice place.
Yeah.
I recommend it.
Well, that's it. I mean, so how old were you when you started your sort of entrepreneurial journey?
I mean, I've always worked in small businesses, so I guess I've always been around entrepreneurs. Like
Yeah.
Dean, when I first started, was like 12 people. It went up to like 30 odd people. The second company I joined was 9 people when I joined, and went up to like 45 people. My company went from obviously me to like 35 people. So I guess the whole time, but I think I was 29 when I started Stringo, my own business. But I think I've always been in startups and scale ups, like I've never been institutionalized in a massive business.
Yeah.
And I think I'd hate it, like my partner works in a council and I just think, oh my God, that just sounds like absolute hell to me.
Yeah.
It's so restrictive. Everything is like,
Yeah.
well, I need to get permission for this. We need to get permission for this. Oh, we can't possibly buy coffee for the team. There's no budget for coffee. And I'm like, oh, right, this is all just very weird.
There's always a budget for coffee at Howell.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. We're on our 9th right now. I
So
think
do you think there's a perfect size for a small business? Do you think there's like do you think there's almost like a golden sort of business? Like is it 5 people, 12 people, 20 people? What do you think there's a
I do think it depends on the business and what sector it's in. I do often say to people though that actually keeping a business small can often make it much more profitable. I think you either need to have a large business, probably 50 plus people, or smaller business, 10 or so people. I think the middle piece is really tricky. And I think the middle piece can take you away as a founder from what you want to do, what you're good at. You become like basically a full-time manager, which is not for everyone.
No.
You're potentially dealing with a lot of people issues every day rather than I want to say business issues, like actually delivering client work or doing the stuff that probably got you into the business in the first
stuff
place.
you enjoy, really, isn't
Yeah,
it?
the stuff you enjoy. And I think sometimes actually you can start making less money then as well because you essentially like paying huge amounts in overhead. So it is tricky. And like I was speaking to someone recently, they're just like a physio, and they've got like, I don't know, probably like 6 freelance physios working for them. They're like, I think I want to get my own office. I'm based in a gym now. I want to get, well, not my own office, like my own premises. And I was like, I just think you're going to be doing tons more work for the same.
Yeah, I think
I was like, why? Like, you
Why
need to make
bother?
a decision if you really want to do that. I was like, but like, I don't think it's the right thing for you.
No.
I was like,
and I don't pretend to have the answer either. I mean, finding that sweet spot is really important. But also, what I would say is that from my experience, I mean, I've been at this for quite a long time.
Well,
yeah,
we
quite a
always,
long time.
there's always a nod towards Chris's age.
There's always a nod towards my age, but no one knows.
It was like a Benjamin Button situation.
It is a Benjamin Button. But that was
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt. Oh yeah,
Well, there you go.
He's taking it. He's taking
I'll
it.
take that.
That wasn't the attempt, but there you go. You can have it. You can have that.
But yeah, I mean, it is quite tricky. But I always find that I'm not an accountant. I'm not a all those roles within a business. And you're right. You do find yourself doing. You do find yourself having to do. And to a certain extent, I'm not even a managing director, in that role I kind of do in the business. But ultimately, I'd rather take on a creative director's role, I suppose, or the kind of person, face of the business, or whatever you want to call it, Brad Pitt. But
you're going to stick with that.
But
one
yeah,
now,
so I don't have the answer either. But I'm always fascinated to understand where that sweet spot is, because it does. I think it's slightly elusive. I
think it depends on the industry as well, though, because I think the creative industry, particularly in the past few years, or particularly the past decade, has kind of like grown and shrunk in such a weird, sort of bubbly, messy way in some respects. But I think we've found over the past, particularly for events, and I don't know whether you found the same thing, a lot of filmmakers and editors that work with us prefer to be freelance. They prefer to have that flexibility to be able to go and run off to do an ITV job or go off to do a TV show. And I think it's often you've got to kind of, you could hem people in and keep them hostage. But then also I think that different seasons, the different industries have different times of year that things are busy, things are quiet. So having that flexibility to be able to adapt is really key.
But it does focus you as a business when you've got overheads, significant overheads. It's certainly when you're paying when you're paying 15 mortgages and not just your own, it does focus the mind.
Yeah, I agree.
Somewhat.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. I also think it depends. Being a member of staff in a smaller business, I think, does give you a lot of variety.
Yeah.
It's almost like being freelance, but not quite freelance.
Yeah.
Because, and I think
that's
what I've always liked about being in small businesses. You can learn a lot about a lot.
Yeah.
And I think someone said this to me recently. They were like, "Oh, I really like my job because I get to talk to a lot of different people." And I was like, "Yeah." And I think that's actually, from years of being in creative, you learn a lot about a lot of sectors. You go to events, they're about totally different things. It could be pharma one day, it could be like cybersecurity the next day, it could be something else. And you're learning about a lot of stuff. And it was the same making TV commercials, and it was the same making corporate videos. Like I remember at Dean, I was producing something for Clydesdale Bank once, and the client was like, "Oh, so we're going to do this program on agri." And I remember saying to my colleague, I was like, "What's agri?" And they're like, "Agricultural businesses." And I was like, "Oh, right, yeah, if you just said that, I would have known what that was." I was like, "But I'd never ever heard this term
It's
before."
like a code. You've got to be in with the right people.
But you don't know what you don't know.
And so then I was filming on a farm and learned all about like how the business of farming worked and how some of them had pivoted and now had an Airbnb on his farm, in his pig sheds. And I was like, it's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
And actually, it's very few jobs where you get that variety of stuff.
Absolutely.
Massively so.
In while being a member of staff.
Yeah. And that's it. Yeah. Because I think the thing that I find about our job is that we end up with a weird level of trivia in lots of different industries. So I could tell you like a bit about a particular machine in a factory, but then also how a certain tractor works, and then how like an oven works, and like in different kind of places, and you end up with a weird sort of ability to just know. Like I'll go into a restaurant and be like, "Oh, I know what that technology is. I know what they're doing," and it's people like, "How did you get that from your job?" But you just bring away different things.
You do. So if you were going to give a bit of advice to anybody sort of coming into the creative space or the technology space, a young sort of dynamic, sort of vibrant individual, what kind of advice would you give, given your journey and your experience and expertise?
Yeah, I think I'd say work really hard. I think, like, for me, people that apply themselves and work really hard always seem to succeed. And I think sometimes people give up a little bit too easily. And I think just like really work at it. It's hard to get it in, but there is smaller companies that are happy to take people on that'll apply themselves and show value. And I think, that's literally like learning everything when you're on set or you're given an opportunity. It's literally like asking questions, understanding, asking the follow-up question to the answer to the question. And I think that's always came really natural to me. I don't know if it does come naturally to everyone, but I think it's so important because from that you learn. And then actually all it takes is when you're doing that bit of work experience for you to go, oh, so why do you do it like this? Could you not do it like this? For them to go, oh, actually we could do it like that.
Yeah.
Oh, actually that's a really good idea. Oh, actually this person like they can add some value here. And I think that's probably the piece for me that I think people miss. And I think, I'd like to see it was about connections. I didn't really start with connections. I'm really crap at network. And, I think it's just like work hard and try really hard when you're there and show effort and be enthusiastic. Nobody wants someone sitting in the corner not doing anything because you're just seen as a deadwood.
Yeah,
that's it.
we have a strict no drip policy.
It's a really good way of putting it.
I can't be doing with it. And there's no such thing as a stupid question. And we always do that if we've got somebody new or a runner or someone on an event or whatever it might be. Just ask. And the other thing as well is if you don't know, don't guess. The times I've seen people trying to jam a lens into a bayonet fitting, and you think, for God's sake, stop. Just ask someone to give you a hand. And I think that's really important. But I like your comment around grafting. Just work hard.
Yeah.
There is no secret, is there?
You just need to work really hard.
Just crack on.
But I
with
think
it.
that's the same in most industries. Actually, if you're a hard worker, hard workers tend to rise to the top.
Yeah.
Totally.
Because actually, there's quite a lot of people that are not really hard workers, but actually being in the creative industry is really competitive, and probably maybe more so competitive now than when I got into it. But I always think if you work really hard and you add value to clients, they'll come back to you. And actually, it hasn't ever really felt really hard to get work for me. But I think that's because when you're, I put my all into it, I will add value to a client. I will challenge a client. And I think that's also something that's quite important is, and I kind of live my life by it a bit, is challenge. Actually providing a bit of creative challenge or challenge to someone's thinking is really important. And I used to see this all the time at StreamGo. Like a client's probably running 1 or 2 digital events a year. We're running like multiple every day. So they ask for something to be done a certain way. That's just because that's the only way they know to solve the problem. Doesn't mean it's the best way. And I think sometimes like we get stuck in this rut of you just do what the client asks. And I'm like, it's not about just doing what they ask. It's about saying, okay, it seems like you're trying to solve this problem. You're trying to get more sponsorship. What about if we did this and we did this and we did this? Because actually this is going to solve this, going to make a better attendee experience, better experience for your sponsors, and you're going to get more revenue from it. And then most times they'll say, oh yeah, actually, I will do that. And I think that's what makes people want to work with people, because they realize that they're adding some value along the way. Whereas I think, sometimes people can get into the moving paper across the desk situation, and actually there's no value getting added when you're just moving paper across the desk.
And that's it. And I think it's with the way the creative industry is at the minute, is the expertise and the technical skills are kind of different in lots of different ways, in terms of there'll be some clients who sort of assume that we literally are just the people with the kit and we'll show up and we provide the experience of having a camera on you. But actually there's so much more attached to that, which is that we almost end up becoming consultants for a lot of projects, and we get asked to give our expertise without ever having to pick up a camera, because I think that there's so many gaps in people's knowledge, and because it's grown so quickly, often it requires people like us to keep up with what's going on.
And I'd agree with you, and I also agree with Richard that the ability for someone in my position or your position is to say no to a client, that's actually quite refreshing, because actually I don't mean this arrogantly or flippantly, but I haven't got anything to lose, in the sense that if a client says I want to do this and this is the way it's going to be, I do say, well, we could, But exactly what you just said. Well, but you might want to consider this as an option, and actually, I think ultimately they respect you for that. And
Even if they decide they don't want to do
even
it,
if they don't want to do it, yeah,
you know, that seed is still in their mind when they're thinking about it in 6 months' time. Because that idea might have come slightly too late for this project.
Yes, completely.
Because of whatever's going on in their organisation or the deadline or whatever, or they just can't get their head around it, or they don't have any mental capacity. But you know, it's still sitting there for them to go, oh, actually. Next time, I could approach this in a slightly different way.
And I do also think, you know, following on from what you were saying, is that we take on increasingly the work that we're doing is more the kind of either the technically complex or risky. So like in the live streaming space, with a live editing, you know, live graphics feed, all that kind of stuff. You know, if the client's got 1,000 people that have all paid 200 quid to be on the live stream, it can't be, you know,
the pressure
it can't
is real.
be Fiona it can't be Fiona from the office with an iPhone on this occasion, because the risk and the bandwidth and everything associated with that. So we take that risk on. So in a sense, we are a creative business in a creative space, but actually a lot of the stuff we're doing now is more technically challenging, and it's the risk. It's that, you know, we will live stream from a field with no internet, and we'll figure it out. We'll put a Starlink up or whatever it might be. But ultimately, it's that differentiates you from just the standard kind of, we can do that ourselves. So it's kind of, you're always sort of yin and yanging from like, I'm a creative, you know, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want it to look this way. But actually, a lot of the time, what you are is a technical bod delivering a technical solution.
I used to have this all the time. My partner used to say to me years ago, he's like, I can't believe that clients will fly you to Asia or to San Francisco to stream an event. And I was like, yeah, but they need a throat to throttle.
Yeah.
Someone that they trust.
Yeah.
And if it goes wrong, they need to go, it wasn't me, it was him.
Yeah.
I got an expert in, I flew him here. Like, it's all him.
Yeah.
Like, this wasn't me. And I used to see this all the time, especially around internal comms events that I used to do loads. Like, the risk to an internal comms manager if your event goes wrong is like, oh my God, they're like, I remember one guy, he's working at Circle, and he was like, it is career ended for me if this goes wrong. He was like, and I remember I used to do an event with him every week. It was probably about 2014 or something. Circle were in a bit of trouble, and it was with their chief exec, wherever he was in the country that week, and we do it to all their senior leaders, and literally he'd be like wet under his arm. These events would last 20 minutes, and the internal comms guy was wet, and he was like, it's so stressful. Oh my God, it's so stressful. And I used to just think, oh my God, all you're doing is reading the questions that come in and choosing which question goes to him. Like, I'm doing all of the stress over here. And yet you are like, he was literally like, just dripping sweat at the end. He's like, I just don't know how you do it. It's so stressful, this. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, like you are like on edge over this. And I thought, that's why I'm here. He wants to go, if this goes wrong, well, it's his fault. It's his fault. I'll get another one of him. This will never happen again. You don't need to replace me.
Yeah,
that's it, and it is the jeopardy element that is such a one of our biggest events that we do every year is Atomicon at the Glass House. Now it is, I have to remember, it's the Glass House now.
Shout out
to the Glass House, and I think
I'll say Andrew and Pete
as well, and then Beacon House and everyone who gets involved with those events. I'm going to do the full
I was going to say,
you know, when you get an Oscar, I like to thank the Academy. But within that, I always think that the most awkward, like the most tense moment for me is that hour before you go live, beforehand. The morning when you're sat.
It's even worse if there's no problem.
Yeah,
you're just waiting.
You can always find one.
Whereas when you're busy with some kind of issue, that hour before just flies by. But when you're sitting, you're like,
and because
sound working still. Oh my God, should I just check this again?
Because one of the first years that we did it, we have
don't give away trade secrets here.
I was going to say, one of the first years that we did it, I remember we had our close cam in front of me at the very back of stage one, and I remember thinking, why is the lens jiggling? Why is it wiggling? And it was because my legs were so restless under the table, it was moving and I realised, oh my God, it's because I was so like geared up for it. And when you hear the music and you hear the build up, it's like every year it just, I love it.
And also the bit I always like is, and I don't know if you've come across this, it doesn't matter the size of the event, you can have 20 people in a room, 200 people in a room, 2,000 people in a room, whatever it might be. there's always a live streaming expert or a filmmaker that wants to come and be your friend at that point, and it's kind of like, like, right, okay, that's fine, but
Go away.
I am actually I'm working. This is quite important. I don't want to I don't want to push you away, but I don't want to get into a conversation about XLR connections this second, if that's okay.
No.
I'm quite lucky. I always try and make sure I'm positioned out of anywhere from the audience,
Yeah.
backstage or somewhere. Like, I absolutely despise being in the audience. Like, you can't talk to your crew easily.
No.
You can't. It's like you have to wear headphones to listen to your stream.
Yeah.
It's just there's so much going on when you're vision mixing and streaming and stuff that it's just easy to miss.
I know.
And then it means I avoid all of that. It's just camera ops. They get
Yeah.
those
Well,
people
that's
coming
it.
up to them, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can see through the window. Looks
that's
fun
it.
down there.
Well, actually, from my perspective, it's actually for me. It's actually worse when I'm there just as the boss. I'm there just kind of overseeing, and I don't have a role. And then you're kind of like this.
You
Kind
get
of
a
like
bit twitchy,
you're a
don't
bit.
you?
I do get twitchy because I kind of like, A, I feel like I should have a role, and B, it's kind of like, well, I don't. What am I actually here for?
Yeah.
Or, but then, as you say, if it goes wrong, it's kind of look for the tall bald guy in the daft shoes.
Well, you've given yourself that identity
Exactly,
now. So,
I have.
And like,
Not Brad Pitt.
Not
well,
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say
Maybe
Brad Pitt in those shoes.
Or Brad Pitt's dad, maybe. I don't know.
Dad Pitt.
Dad Pitt.
But I always insist on a little velvet rope to stop people getting past
you like
me.
a
And
velvet
I like
rope,
a
don't you?
rope. I'm roped in like some kind of museum
Yes.
exhibit. But I think
Do
there's
you take that with you, or do you get that from the venue?
I need my own personal one, don't I?
Do you?
Velvet
like
rope.
glitter.
A
That's what I
branded
really
velvet rope.
I would usually just gaffer tape
Yeah,
between
that's
two
right.
seats to say this is the demarcation line. You don't come past here.
Oh no.
This is my zone here.
Yeah.
Oh no, what I get is because where I'm normally sat for that event in particular, I don't get a lot of room behind me on where I'm sat, and you still get the excuse me, can I just squeeze past?
Yes.
And I'm like, no, you can't. I'm literally there's like thousands of people waiting for me to do these and press these buttons. So
my
no.
my favorite is, can I just unplug this to charge my phone? It's like,
No.
well, no, because
You wouldn't do that if someone was on life support.
No,
would you?
literally, you
They
can't.
do always flow towards you, don't they? Because they know you have power.
Yeah,
They're
lots
like,
of
oh my
power.
God,
Literally,
this guy can
yeah.
help me. You're like,
Yeah.
no.
No, not gonna
My
do
own phone is in charge of
it.
things.
Yeah, that's right. So
you
no.
gotta keep the stern face. But in terms of events, obviously we've been working at a lot of events recently which are very much in the tech sector. They're very much for startups, and there's always a discussion about AI and what's coming next. I'd be fascinated to know like what you think the future of the event space actually looks like, because I don't think anyone really knows at this point about we obviously been through the pandemic and that affected events massively, and I think there's been a bit of a recovery where there's been more hybrid events and whatnot. But where do you think it's going to go in the next few years?
I think in the next few years we'll stay on hybrid or digital. I think it does depend on the event. There's nothing online really that substitutes that face-to-face meeting of people. But I think travel budgets are really tight now for a lot of organizations, and they're not flying people around as much to go to events. And I think that is a detriment to events. But there's still going to be large events in the calendar where C-level execs are getting together multinationally, and they will be flying. I just think there's a lot of change in that marketplace. I look at councils, I look at a lot of organizations. They just do not send people to events like outside of their region now, really. So I was involved with an event last year for a national, for like part of the Ministry of Justice, like Department of the Ministry of Justice, and they had budget to do a physical event, but they didn't because they knew they wouldn't. They were targeting local authorities, and they knew they wouldn't get the attendees.
Wow.
Like they're just not, the travel budget is just not there for them, so they just did a digital event instead. And I think so. It's not always the event organizer's budget. I think it's you've got to factor in the attendees' budget to get there when it's a physical event. And I think that is going to weigh heavy still, and is a bit of a legacy from COVID when travel budgets were slashed and haven't really been fully restored. It was kind of like one of those budgets that was a line item that was like, oh, well, we just don't need that anymore now. That's just gone. It's just we don't need travel anymore. So I think that's part of it. Having said that, I do think there's a lot that AI can do around physical events to get the right people in front of the right people. Like the way we network at physical events hasn't really changed in probably hundreds of years. It really depends on who you're standing next to, who you already know, or who you're making coffee next to, or getting food next to that you meet. And I think, especially when you look at like really big events, like 500 people plus, 1,000 people plus, it's really hard to find the right person at that event to talk to that has the same problems as you, or is slightly further ahead in the problem, or where you can network effectively. So I think there's a lot that AI can do in that space around apps and stuff to bring people together. StreamGo were doing something like that. As I was accent, I know others are doing it, and it sounds really gimmicky, but I do think there's a lot that can be improved in that physical network and stuff.
I think it's a great show.
Just chucking
actually.
people together
I think
is a really low tech way,
Yeah.
and it's useful. But I just think, even when you're there with 100, you can't speak to all 100. How do you find the ones that are similar to you? It's almost impossible unless you speak to someone else that goes, Richard, you should really speak to this guy, and they kind of do that
You
manual
form like
piece.
a cluster, don't you? And I think because with that, when I'm networking, the thing that I struggle with the most is when you break off a conversation and start a new one somewhere else, because you end up I almost feel like I feel bad that I'm going to say goodbye to you now and move on to someone else. It's quite brutal. So I end up kind of latching on to one person that I kind of get a good rapport with. And then I just sort of think, I'm going to hold on to you now and I'm not going to talk to anyone else. But...
And you've got to be quite brutal, haven't you, with networking, in a sense, like, and I like that idea of like, you could put individuals together, you could put clusters together, you get like a group of people who've got a shared problem or whatever. I'm really into that, because I always think as well that it is important to be generous with your time, but ultimately you can't stand and talk to the same person for 15, 20 minutes when you're only there for an hour or two anyway. So it's kind of like, how do you, as you say, like, how do you break that off or whatever? And I mean, I've got the thing as well, is that I'm quite, I'm freakishly big. So like,
and I'm freakishly small.
Well,
I think I'm in between.
But at a networking meeting, I kind of like, you kind of bowl up to people, and they almost like, oh my god, who's this guy?
We can always spot you in the crowd.
And then you're trying to muscle into a conversation. It's quite awkward. So I quite like that. I kind of like that concept of being assigned, matched to some sort of buddy.
They kind of did in the pandemic. I don't know if you remember this, where when they started to bring back in-person events, they started giving people, like, there was like traffic light stickers or lanyards where it was like, green is you can hug me and say hello to me.
This was around the social distance. We did that in our office, actually.
Yeah, and it was like orange is like,
we had wristbands.
Yeah, orange was like a kind of like elbow bump, and then red was like, don't go near me. And I remember we've done a few expos where that was the case, and I ended up kind of, it was useful, but I was always there going, well, what does green mean? Well, what does red mean?
But then you're into like an implied hug situation, aren't you? It's like, well,
like, is it a handshake? Is it a hug? Is it both? But yeah, I think, and I think the ways events can make it enjoyable for both sides, whether you're virtual or in person, is really important, because, and I think there are a lot of technology companies out there that are offering that sort of, it's almost like you're there, like you're in a video game or something. But
avatars, like we've done some stuff with avatars, haven't we? Then I don't want to be the Bob, the bod Wii character. Like, I'm Mr. Easy to draw anyway, so it's kind of like, I don't want that. To me, that's. I
think the thing is, for me, I don't really see, and we used to have this a lot at StreamGo, why a digital event needs to mimic a physical event, and we used to have this all the time. Make a 3D conference center for us, and it was like, but why? Why does it need to look like a conference center? Like, why? Like, it
could look like anything.
It could look like anything. Like, we have an opportunity here to do something different, and I think so many event managers would be like, okay, we want it to look like a conference center. In fact, we want it to look like the conference center we always go to, and you're just like,
we'll go to it then.
Why? Like, it's just like, I don't really get that view, and I also think this thing where you're walking around in a 3D space, again, it's who you bump into. It's like it's exactly the same as a physical event. It's an unscientific way of networking, and it just depends on who you happen to be next to in the 3D space. And again, I'm like, well, is that the best way to do it? Like, surely we're beyond that now. I also think that there's room in events for the way content's delivered should be totally different now. Like, I absolutely despise keynotes. I mean, I've been saying this for like 10 years, and like, my one-man crusade hasn't changed yet.
It's a two-man crusade. I'm with you.
Get on the soapbox.
I am with you.
But like, scripted discussions are so much better, and I always say it to clients, I'm like, but you never see a keynote on the telly, do you? Boris giving an announcement over COVID, I was like, you see a conversation on the TV, and they're like, oh yeah, why is that? And I'm like, because it's more interesting. Like, you just zone out when someone's talking at you for like an hour, just totally zone out. And
It
I
feels like
think, and
lecture,
death
doesn't
by
it?
PowerPoint.
Oh God.
So I think there's so much that can be done on events.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if people's attention spans with TikTok and stuff is getting less, which I think,
Yeah, I
well,
think it is.
I think attention spans definitely getting less. But I also wonder with stuff like ChatGPT and stuff now, where you can summarize large passages of text really quickly. I do wonder if people will be willing to go to a conference all day and listen to 1 hour keynotes, one after another after another.
Yeah.
Because actually, if you can get a recording of that and summarize that in 20 minutes, that is a lot more productive.
Yeah, because is it about the information or is it about the energy and the experience you get from it? Because I think a lot of speakers, a lot of people who go to conferences and like the TEDx talks that we've done or Atomicon, these sorts of things, they're great for getting people motivated, and like you feel almost like you're in some kind of like you can feel the buzz like at
You've
the end
got
of
to
like
have
events.
a really good speaker for that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I've got to think about speakers insofar as whenever I go, when we're not doing, if I'm an attendee, if I'm a regular punter, I want the speaker to be. I don't really mind if the speaker's from a different industry or from a different sort of background, different experience. There are so many speakers that are so compelling, which is why I would go to a TEDx event as a punter, not only as a to produce there, because I quite like the fact that someone might stand up and say, well, I was an astronaut, or I was this, or I did this, or this was my journey. And I think it's that journey, that storytelling. I think that's really vital. And I'm with you. I don't want to either physically pay or pay with my time to watch some geezer reading from a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
If that was the objective, email it to me. I'll read it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Agree.
And you can just feel the life just ebbing away in the audience. You can, I think if you know what it's like. Once you do events, you get to know the audience, you get to know the crowd, you get to know the vibe, and you can actually feel it deflating. You can actually feel, and you just in your head you're going, just shut up, just shut up.
And you see
wrap it up.
you see the live stream views dropping.
Oh
and you
yeah,
think,
you do.
Oh
Yeah.
God,
And it's so hard. But I'd also say though that I think there's increasingly an expectation that if it's a pure live event, that it's got to be good. That I think punter expectation is high.
It's higher.
And if you turn up somewhere and it's a bit like, oh God, this is just a telly on a stick in a room with some chairs on, and I've paid to be here, or it's a chunk of time, or I've flown here, or whatever it might be. I think that you can feel the disappointment there. I think that people want to feel like it's an experience that's bigger and better than that.
I agree, and I also just think people want interactivity.
Yeah.
Like audience questions are so important at events, rather than someone talking for 50 minutes and then doing 5 minutes of questions. I just think like a conversation is much more interesting to watch, and a conversation that involves the audience makes it even more interesting to watch. And I also think the length of stuff, like I was doing something a few years ago, internal comms for a large banking technology company, and I pitched it that it got changed from what used to be a kind of quasi presentation into like an hours long magazine program. But I was really conscious that even if you had the CEO there for an hour, that's still just going to drag.
Yeah.
So it got split up into like 10-minute segments with 2 anchor presenters. They could pass between each other. They had different guests on talking about different parts of the business. Do you know what I mean? And it became like a 1 hour magazine program, and the feedback from that was like much better.
Yeah, and also you've got so much more scope in post production there that you can, once it's gone out, you can chop it up, you can make little bite sized things. You can you get a lot more to play with over a period of time than we've done this event and that's it.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think, well, just because I'm conscious we could talk for
I was going to say, this could be
like,
the longest podcast we've ever done.
I know, I was rudely looking at my watch only because I wanted to make sure I didn't go, it wasn't like 4:00 in the afternoon or something.
We're paying by the minute.
But in terms of, a lot of our listeners are often budding kind of production people who want to start a business in the creative industry. They want to get in the production world or the event world, and a lot of them, like I said, it's varying ages, but often in their 20s as well, or fresh out of university, whatever it may be. What would be your advice, or like must-dos or tips for someone who wants to set up a business in the production space, particularly in the Northeast? Maybe if I add that as a little bracket.
Yeah, I think I would probably try and work with other businesses first and learn, because I think setting up a business, there's a lot of stuff to think about in a business, culturally, finances, how you get clients, how you keep clients, how you retain clients. I think there's a lot of stuff to learn. And I think personally, it's easier probably to do that by learning from someone. I'm not saying necessarily that needs to be very long, but I think you can learn a lot quickly. I think if you were at uni, my suggestion would be that you are actively doing work experience or projects now. Like I started doing that like when I was 16 at college, and that led to me being in full-time work when I was 19. I left uni after a year. There's just no need for uni anymore. And I think, like starting when you get out of uni is probably a little late. You really need an income at that point, and actually you want to be starting to build that income through freelance activities while you're at uni. I would say is probably the best option. And I think by being freelance and doing runner work and production assistant work and bits of work with lots of different companies, you can see how different companies operate. And I think that then gives you a lot of knowledge to then go on to potentially start your own company. Because you're learning, you can see what works, you can see what doesn't work, because what works in one company doesn't always work in another company, and vice versa. But I think it's really helpful process. So that's probably what I would say is the most important thing. But like, be tenacious. You need to make a lot of calls, you need to contact a lot of companies to try and get in, and you need to keep trying to make friends with them to get to get in there and do some work for them, so that you can learn. And then when you get that opportunity, learn as much as you can, and like apply yourself, work really hard, apply yourself, ask questions, and take on board the information that's being given to you. I think is the most important bit, because I think sometimes people just hear the answer and don't do anything with the answer.
Yeah,
Do you know
that's
what I
it.
mean? Like,
Yeah, and
I'd echo that.
I think. Sorry, I was going to say that in terms of
Sorry.
the. Sorry, well, we're always talking over each other, but we're being good this time. In terms of, do you think go really niche or go really broad? Because I think some production companies, some go very, very specific, like we only work with specific sectors, we only offer these, or do you go big?
I would just chip in before Richard answers that. I would just chip in though, just to follow on from that, is learn about business. That'd be my number one. You may be a great camera op, you may be a great animator, you may be a great graphic designer, you might be a great whatever. Learn about business, because actually there's a big difference between doing what you enjoy and it's your vocation and it's your live stream, and being in business. And I think a lot of,
even being freelance.
or even being freelance.
It's basically being in business.
I think that's a really, that would be one of my key takeaways for anybody who ever asks me about that, about being in business, starting a business. Learn about business, learn about, and then my other final thing is, I feel like I've hijacked it now.
That's fine.
Well, then my other final thing is, don't spend any money. Keep your costs down. You don't need an office. You don't need a van. You don't need to go out and spend $5,000 on a lens and $5,000 on a camera body. Don't do any of that. Go and make, exactly what you said. Go and make friends, make contacts, learn about what you're doing, learn your skill, learn your art, and because you don't have overheads on day one, because it will just ruin you.
I would argue, to be honest, like I feel like I've always operated on a bootstrap type equipment base, and I think if you have skill, there's little need to spend an absolute fortune on equipment. The barrier to entry in this marketplace is tiny now. Like, gosh, when I first started at Dean, like we were filming everything on Digibeta, and like the deck alone that we had in the office was like 50 grand. Like the barrier to entry was massive. The barrier to entry is like nil now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I remember we used to be using camera ops, used to be using like 45 grand cameras. That's just totally unnecessary now. So I think the barrier to entry is so low. It is just about the ability now, and it's about being able to think on your feet to get out of a problem with the equipment you have. So it's about knowing the equipment you have, knowing what it does, and therefore when you're hit with a problem, thinking on your feet to problem solve. And I think problem solving is like really important skill across life in general, but especially in production, because you're often on a farm or at a venue, and you're like, oh god, I didn't expect this to happen today. Like, oh my god, like I can't just ring someone and get another camera here, because like I'm in the middle of nowhere here. I've had loads of instances, for example, where I've went abroad for work, and Kate hasn't turned up off the airline.
Oh,
And you're like,
no.
oh, right, okay, this is tricky now. Like, I'm left with
Yeah.
half the stuff that
Yeah.
I should have. Let's hit the phones.
Yeah.
Let's, do you know what I mean? Like, I remember I went to Istanbul once. It was like Friday. We landed at 3:00. No tripods and loads of cables missing. And I was like, oh, we're
God.
really screwed. And I said to my colleague, I was like, you go to the venue, start setting up with what we have. I'll go to the hotel now. Just an hour and a half later, I'm there with tripods. He's like, well, you've done really well to do this. And I was like, I'm pretty resourceful when I put my mind to it. I was like, I just like hit the phones and started ringing everyone and like just working until this was sorted. He was like, I can't believe you've got here in an hour and a half. I've only been here an hour and a half. And I was like, well, yeah, just if this shit were, it's Friday afternoon. If I leave it till tomorrow, we're done for.
Yeah, that's
Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's it. The kind of, what is it? The hard drive situation. You always say there's two types of hard drive: one that's failed and one that's about to fail.
There are only two types of hard drives in the world. Yeah.
But it's like permanently being almost very pessimistic, but you've got to be like, when we do events, we bring extra cameras that will never see the light of day. We hire extra things that will never ever be used, hopefully, touch wood. But
I mean, and again, it goes the other way, doesn't it? Where we've had examples where you've had a freelancer on their first ever shoot, and they sidle up to you and go, I bought one battery with me and it's run out. What do I do? And we obviously do the right thing and
I would say though, everyone's been there. Like, we had this thing at Dean where the director always used to take the stock to a shoot when we were shooting on tapes. It was just what happened there. There were always in-house directors that we worked with, and I was doing the shoot for a TV commercial. I can't remember exactly where it was. And turned up, we were like all sorted and ready, and the DOP was like, "Okay, so stock? Have you got the stock, Richard?" And I was like, "Oh, I haven't got the stock." And we were using a freelance director that day, and I was like, "Yeah,
that'll do it.
This stock hasn't come." And luckily he was like, "Okay, I've got some in the car." And I was like, "Right, champion, I'll get some from the office.
And that's
shipped over now." But everyone's done it.
But
and I think sometimes it's not even done out of naivety; it's just done out of habit. At Dean, that never entered my head because that was always the director's responsibility. We always had an internal person as the director, and this one job we didn't have an internal person. That was just the one bit that was just forgotten out of that little bit of process. But after that, I had stock in my car. I went and got a box of the Office and it lived in my boot. And actually, while I was sorting the garage out the other week, I found something. I was like, I remember these pink purple tapes. I remember these bad boys. I was like, almost feel like I don't want to chuck this away, but also I don't really need to keep 10 of these.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like, you just kind of, you end up learning. I think every time you learn from the last time exactly what you need to bring, exactly what you need to do. And then,
but some people don't learn from the last time. Though. That's the key piece here. You do need to learn from the last time. And you need to learn even when it wasn't a problem, it could be a problem next time. So it's like, going back to the stock analogy, it could be that we almost just scraped by because we just had enough stock. So it's like, okay, it wasn't a disaster, but it could have been a disaster. So next time, I'm going to take twice as much stock. You see what I mean? So it's like, and I don't think everyone quite gets that. They just go, okay, well, it was fine. It's like, well, yes, but it might not be fine next time. And next time you might not be next to the office where you can just pop in and get more stock. You might be in the middle of nowhere or abroad or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And it's a bit easier now with cards, isn't it? Because you can just offload them straight away.
We have a card quarantine system. And that is the
the anxiety that comes from it.
But again, like I'm data obsessed because basically that's it. Without it, we're dead in the water, and our clients would not be very happy if we suddenly mislaid some data. But that quarantine process it's laid down. It does not, if it's in the box with the lid on, nobody takes the lid off ever.
You guard it with your life
ever because it's in quarantine. It can't go back into the system, and that is but you're right. It's only because a time in the distant past, someone needed a drive, dipped their hand in, takes a drive out, and that's it. You've got data compromised.
We're all just very traumatized people.
Traumatized by data.
We're all
I remember, because obviously I started out in tapes at first, and I just moved into directing some stuff. It was for Newcastle College, which luckily was directly opposite Deanville's office, literally here to the car park away. And I was sent out with an EX1 with someone from the office, and it was the first job that company had done tapeless. It was back in 2011, 2010 or something. And I had 12 interviews to do in that day. They were rammed days. And it was the first time I was directing, so I overshot that to like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? The
Yeah.
nth degree to make sure I had the right content. And I remember like after the second interview, like Pete was just like, it's almost the cards are full.
Oh.
Before the days we had laptops, and I was like, well, what do you mean? There's like 10 more interviews to do.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
Mark, who was in post, told me that like we'd never fill these cards today, and we filled them like already, and like we just had someone going back and forth to the office all day.
Yeah.
And then I just remember the card came back, and we were like I rang the editor and was like, "You telling us I should delete it?"
Yeah.
But I just filmed this an hour ago. I was like, I'm not like, I was like, are you watching it? Do they look like this on the screen? Or have you definitely got it? And then we lost one clip of 5 minutes that we managed to recover, play out through the SDI onto a digibeta tape. And then we had all these tapes on the shelves. And it was just this one that was like Newcastle College, the lost clip. And I was like, I remember the first days of tapeless. They were bad times.
Well, that's it. And like we have backups of backups of backups of backups. So that even like 5 years after a project, we'll go, maybe we should get rid of it now. But then you just don't want to.
Our terms of business state that we store everything for a year, but in reality, we store stuff for a long time
until we're ready to let go of it. I think
it used to be like that, Dean. It was just tapes everywhere, but you could keep them. It was really easy then. And then obviously moved into digital events, and events are totally different in that you never really go back and re-edit them.
No.
So kind of once it's done, it's just done. You can just delete it. But obviously, I was like,
you're like,
no. You never know.
Like we can't be deleting this. We need to find somewhere to put this. And then all of a sudden, you just have this mountain of stuff because you're filming day-long events, so the amount of data is massive. And I'm like, but. You just 2 years since that, but like I don't feel like I want to delete it.
Yeah, and you just know that the moment you do,
they might come back.
Yeah, the moment you do, they'll ring up and go, "Oh, that footage you had, can you just re-edit it?" And you're like, "No."
What I would also say about, I mean, we need to wrap this up.
Sorry.
But I was also saying, Richard, about like overshooting is that I think we're on job number 1,850 something booked in today. Mm-hmm. Every single job we book in, we go, right, we're not going to overshoot on this project, and I think you can't. I think the paranoia of undershooting. I don't think in that time we've ever undershot a project.
No, the only time is, well, you don't undershoot, but the only time you get it on point is when you're storyboarding, and you have to literally stick to the like in TV ads. You've always got to
pick up shots or a bit of B-roll.
I am better with it now, I have to say, than I used to be, but not. But I think maybe I'm just a bit done and a bit lazy with it. It's usually for a favour, and I'm like, I can't really be bothered to be doing tons of this. This needs to be like minimum amount of effort.
Oh yeah.
But overshooting is hard. It's like a really hard mindset to get out of.
It is. Well,
but it does burn through money.
That's my motto. I'm gonna have that in Latin.
Well, yeah, because we'll do a 2-day event, and then I'll have a 2-minute promo to edit, and I'll end up with about 25 minutes of usable cuts, and I'm like, I've got to condense that down.
Well, so much. Sell the customers.
Oh my God, I remember we used to be in 20-second TV commercials, and I'd come back with like 8 tapes, and the editor would be sat all day just capturing tapes, and you were like, so you're not going to get it edited today, are you? Because they're like, well, no, you've brought like 6 hours, and I'm like, I know, I don't know what happened yesterday,
and the
but like
process is
once
so
you start
long.
to shoot one car, you need to shoot this car, and then and then you need a shot of the headlight, and you need this, and you need a badge, and you need this, and you need
it never ends, and then you end up cutting for days, and you never know, and that's what will keep us going, right? But so thank you so much, Richard, for coming on our podcast. I end with one question that's always a little bit more fun and less sort of a bit less technical, but. Is there, from before you got into the industry to when you started, 20 years ago, but we'll whisper that, when you started, was there any particular film or book or piece of content out there that got you inspired to do it, or what is it that got you to do it?
I think it was the love of technical that got me to do it. I started doing some like technical aspects like sound mixing at school in the stage that they had, and I really liked it, and it became I really want to do something technical.
Oh, nice.
And I ended up in a production role because I am quite organized, and I think I struggle to move out of that role because I fit it so well. But I was quite lucky that I learnt like post-production sound dubbing. I used to do like sessions with voiceover artists and stuff while I was at Dean. Obviously, I'd always done some editing at college and stuff. So I think it was that. But then I really wanted to move into live. Like I always wanted to work in live telly. And I think when I moved into doing that in events, it was really similar. And I think
Mhm.
the bit I really like is the multitasking piece. So I really like being at a live event, you know, thinking about streaming, vision mixing cameras, potentially also thinking about graphics, you know, working with presenters, do you know what I mean, where they're standing, etc. I really like that multitasking piece because I feel like
Yeah.
I'm like fully immersed in what I'm doing. And I hate this kind of period where you're working, but you're not really fully
Yeah.
focused. And sometimes that happens on events, especially conferences where you've got one person standing doing a keynote for an hour, and you're like, yeah, okay, so like you're going to be on this shot for like 20 minutes now because you know he's just going to stand and talk, and
Yeah.
that's it. And I started zoning out, and I started doing my emails and stuff. And people were like,
Yeah.
why are you doing your emails while you're streaming an event? I'm like, well,
There's a lull, isn't there? There's a
I've got
natural
like
one.
other
And
stuff
then-
to do, haven't I? Unless this goes bang right now.
And then out of the blue, the talent on the stage is then suddenly just going to start running up and backwards and
Yeah.
forwards. And you go, oh, where did that come
I
from?
hate wanderers on
Oh,
stage.
wanderers. Oh,
I
no.
hate wanderers.
Or they've disappeared, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
I absolutely despise wanderers.
Yeah, stay
It
in one
just
spot.
never looks
Oh, no.
good, especially when you've got to put slides picture in picture.
Yeah.
Wanderers are like,
Wanderers. I don't like wanderers. That's why I like TED. That's why I like TED Talks, because there's a red dot. They got to stay on the red dot.
Keep them
did
encapsulated.
they stay on the red dot though?
Some do. I think there are people who are getting their steps up.
They
while
don't.
they're
They
on the
don't
thing.
stay in.
That's a good way of putting it, isn't it? They're there just to get their steps up, really.
Like seriously, when I did a workshop a couple of weeks ago, where I was talking for 3 hours in front of a group of people, and it was just in an average sized room. I did 10,000 steps just standing at the front and talk. Like, you do genuinely.
I've heard this from
it's a
school teacher
workout.
actually. Like,
Yeah.
one goes to the gym when in half term, they're like, "Well, I've got to. I do 25,000 steps a day usually." And I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
She's like, "I'm a teacher," and I'm like, "How are you doing 25,000
like
steps?" She's like, "Well, back foot," and I was like, "Is that 25,000 steps?"
It's like my Fitbit was buzzing.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's good. But I think for me, the thing that got me into doing what I do, or like the piece of content, I'd have to say it would be Grand Budapest Hotel. I loved a bit of Wes Anderson, but I remember watching that for the first time and being like, I want to be able to edit like that. And I think, and I've dabbled with it throughout my teen years and into early adulthood, and that was something that for me that was the thing. And I always think back to that. When I watch it now, I still think, oh, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to do that. But
So
yeah.
in my case, very briefly, probably similar to Richard's, though, that I was a avid concert goer as a punter.
Hence why you're deaf now.
As I am very deaf, yeah, that'll be Metallica about.
And he's looking after the sound today, guys.
About 1984, where my ears were ringing. I saw Metallica and Anthrax in 1984 at Sheffield City Hall, and my ears didn't stop ringing for a fortnight. But anyway, that's a
Rumour
different
is they're
story.
still ringing.
That's a different story. I always thought the guys and the women in the black kit with the combats on, carrying cables and twiddling knobs, I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world.
You want to be a roadie?
Well, actually, I wanted to be on stage, but that was pretty clear that I was hopeless. So I wanted to be part of that action. I wanted to be part of an event.
I love it.
That's how
I think I definitely noticed that when we were doing drama type stuff at Dean, that is just not where my interest was. You know, doing the same take 50 million times is just like, I was like, oh God. You know, the gratification for me was like, I'm bored with this. Like, I much preferred corporates and stuff that was a bit more smash and grabby, and events where there's a bit more technical nature to it. But yeah, and I think it's about finding what you like. You know, some people couldn't work in corporates and stuff. They're drama through and through. But for me, drama was always a drag. I didn't mind the pre-production pieces. I didn't mind the final locations. Didn't mind that piece. But God, on the set days, they're long ass days, and you feel like you achieve nothing. Like, I remember making a KFC commercial once, and we literally watched chicken go around on a stick for the end frame like 4 hours against green screen, and I was like, it was for this massive London company. I was like, I am done with this. Like, it's 2 a.m. There's only so many times you need to see a chicken burger revolve around on a stick. This is the exact same as it looked an hour ago, as it looked 2 minutes ago. You know, one revolve. You know, let's do it 5 times, and we'll call this one done now.
You've got a lot of people justifying their existence in that.
Oh
in that
yeah,
sort of
totally,
project.
totally.
I'm mindful that we're.
I know that's
it's
fine.
good-
So
it's-
where can our audience find you if they want to find out
do you
more
want
about
to be
you?
found?
Oh, do you want to be found?
You
Are
definitely
you
try and
in
look for me on
hiding?
LinkedIn. I mean, it is a really common name. I'm not going to lie. Or you can go to my website, rich-leader.co.uk. It's probably get you through to me quicker.
Amazing.
I mean,
Well,
you found me on LinkedIn yesterday, though.
I did.
It is
and
a really common name, though.
second attempt. I got there.
Did you?
But I figured by the fact that you had obviously your your live stream stuff, and I was like, that's the guy. So yeah, and thank you for letting me stalk you as well the day before. But thank you so much for being on Looks Like We Made It.
Oh, thanks for
And
having me.
I still haven't got an outro. I need to sort of master one. I put all my effort into the long one at the start,
I'm
but
disappointed after the amazing
I know, I've got
intro.
nothing
And
else
the
to give.
energy of
Is
the
it just
intro.
right?
I'm
Is the outro
spent.
by,
I'm
then?
spent. But yeah, so if you want to be on the show, you can just head to our website and let us know. And we are releasing an episode every other Tuesday. And this is the start of season 6, and let's go with it to season 7.
Brilliant.
But cool, thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.